Welcome to the It's Time podcast with your host, Professor Dale Feinauer from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh College of Business Graduate Programs.
Welcome to another of the UW-Oshkosh College of Business Graduate Program podcasts in our series on leadership. I am excited today to have with me Jim Ransom. Jim was the CEO of Bemis North America, officer of the company, and Jim then evolved from being in that role into teaching in our executive MBA. He had sent a number of people to our executive MBA program, and I asked him at one point, okay, what are we doing right? What are we screwing up? And Jim, with some real energy and gusto, talked about the fact that he thought we were screwing up in terms of how we were covering leadership and how we were covering strategy. And neither one, he thought we were nailing it. And he talked about what should be in there. And I said, well, that's good, Jim. Would you like to teach that? And he claimed he was a little busy running Bemis North America, being officer of a Fortune 500 company. But then as life evolved, he was no longer in that role. And so he's now been teaching with us in the executive MBA for
4 years.
4 years.
This is actually my fifth year.
Your fifth year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've now come over to the dark side in the sense that Saturdays are now one of your favorite days of the week when the EMBA is.
They are. Yes, they are, Dale.
This is good. So, want to talk a little bit about leadership and get you to tell us some of what your lessons have been from your extended experience with leadership. But let's start with, tell us about you and what has made you the leader you are today. What in your background, what in your history has resulted in you becoming the leader you became?
Well, first off, great question. I'm glad to be here. This is one of my favorite things to do is to help support our program, but also one of the things I miss, I've been retired now for 5 years, and one of the things I miss is the buzz you get from leading. And that buzz is hard to replace, as you can imagine. And one of the ways that I filled that gap has been teaching in this MBA program, which has actually become my favorite day of the week. And Saturday was always a fun day, but now it's really fun. And so I wanted to thank you on camera for allowing me to be part of it, because it really is fun. And it's been such a nice gap-filling experience. When you're a retired guy, you still have to have purpose. And playing golf and drinking vodka, while fun, is not exactly a purpose. And so some of the things I've done since then, coaching and doing a lot of the leadership advisory work and teaching in your program has helped fill that gap. It's been just a blast. So, I mean, the leadership journey it's a great one. No one ever sets out at 22 years old, I will be the leader of a Fortune 500. I mean, that's just not a natural goal. It's, get to Friday, string a bunch of those together and see how it turns out. And I got a taste of it really, really, really early. And a lot of my friends have heard this story many, many, many times. But when I was in high school, my dad bought a restaurant and didn't know anything about the restaurant business, but bought a restaurant anyway. And my brother and I and the family, of course, all worked there. And about a year or two into this, and it's an intense business, as you can imagine. Yep. It's a pretty big restaurant. We sat a couple hundred people, had about 60, 75 employees. And a couple years into it, he had a pretty bad heart attack. And it wasn't fatal, thankfully, but back in the early 80s, when you had a heart attack, you were benched. You didn't just take 2 days off, walk around the mall and come back. You're benched for 6 months, 8 months. And so my brother decided to forego college, and I took a year off. In fact, I'm a graduate of UWO at the time, and I was at UW at the time, radio TV major of all things.
And here you are in front of a microphone.
Radio TV major and ended up being an accounting major. So I was clearly dropped as a baby somewhere. But anyway, I took a year off of school to run the family business. And you go from a college kid whose objective is to hit as many bars as you can on as many nights as you can to running the family business. And that was the first taste of this is pretty cool. And, my brother was 18 and I was 20 or 19 and 17. I don't remember exactly. And we ran it, and it was a pretty intense event. And that was my first taste of it. And from then on, it was, I get excited talking about it now, and that was a long time ago. My dad came back, took back over the restaurant, but as we like to tell him and my mother, they're both gone now, but we held all the records. Most customers served, highest revenue per person, most dollars earned in a particular month. So while they were, recuperating, my brother and I created all the records that the restaurant still holds. So I wanted that to be part of this. But that was my first taste of it, Dale, and that was, from that day, I've never looked back. It's just been an energizing kind of experience. As much as I grew up as a financial guy, but the buzz you get from leading is way more fun than the buzz you get from creating wealth or creating money or creating product. Leading people is just really fun, and I've always enjoyed it. Hopefully good at it for the most part, and that's why I've gravitated toward teaching.
Excellent. Good leaders create followers. They get people to follow them. Mm-hmm. But really great leaders get people to join them. They become part of the team.
Where'd you hear that?
I just totally made that up on my own, even though I have heard that from you before. Since you have identified that this is the distinction between a good and a great leader, and we'll be making the assumption that you are in the latter of the two categories, a great leader, at least.
That's not for me to decide. That's for others, of course.
But to the extent that you were a great leader, to the extent that you got people to join your team as opposed to follow you, how did you do that?
No, it is no, serious. So it's a great point. And I think there's kind of two schools of thought. There's plenty of leaders that create an environment, basically a fear to perform. You will or else. So most of the leaders, most of us have worked with most of my life, it's to create a fear to perform. Or there's a handful of leaders that create, sort of a culture of inspire success. So you can create the fear to perform or create, and that works. It does work. It's not sustainable. And in today's environment, I don't think you could pull it off.
Right.
But in the 80s and 90s,
labor market's a little tighter.
Yeah, I think just that the people aren't really tolerant of that kind of style anymore. But you can whip with the org chart, with fear to perform, you can create followers just by the organizational strategy and creating the fear factor. And that's how most North American companies were built. I've always tried to take the other path, which is how do you inspire success? And eventually, if you kind of follow that model, not that you don't have to have the 2x4 now and then, because you do.
Yep.
We'll eventually talk about accountability today, but the ultimate way to get people to join you is you lead from the back, not the front. You lead with humility, not with the fist, and you inspire. You don't create fear. And if you do those things and you're sincere, because you better be sincere, it's really powerful. And once you've tapped that, and you don't learn this when you're 20 or 30 years old, it takes a long time, but once you've tapped into that EQ side of leadership, it's pretty powerful. And so early on, I kind of saw some examples of both styles, and it was pretty obvious which one I thought would work. And I kind of leaned more towards the inspire success and lead with humility instead of, pounding and demanding. You need both. One works, and I don't think one will work in the future. I really don't.
You think that you're going to have to do inspiring in the future to be successful?
I don't think you're going to have employees that will stay with your organization that eventually as a leader, you want to get more out of the organization than it thinks is possible. You try to expand the bandwidth, 1 + 1 = 3, use whatever version of it you want. And to do that by force is impossible. You have to inspire that, not pound it. And if you don't do that in the world we live in with the pace of change, I don't think you have a chance of success anymore. And I got a quick story, where we all had these inflection points of where did you first learn humility? Where did you first figure out what was right and how to do it and what was wrong? And I tell this story in my class all the time, and it leads to a 2-hour debate about, what are some of the key learning experiences that kind of changed you? You have some, I have some, all these inflection points. And mine happened in, it was probably about 1986 in the bathroom at Western States Envelope in Butler, Wisconsin. Now I have your attention. So I was a young guy working at Arthur Andersen, big CPA firm, doesn't exist anymore. Probably a whole nother podcast on how greed can destroy anything that's good. But anyway, I'm working there, and I was running an audit, a test tax client called Western States Envelope. Had been on that engagement for a couple years, and I was the senior on that, so I was running it. And the CEO of Western States Envelope is a guy named French Moss. He's since passed on, but big 6'7" Southern gentleman, very kind of soft-spoken, a guy I got to know pretty well. And I walked in the men's room in Western States Envelope in 1986, and French Moss, 6'8", I'm 5'10", standing up on my toes, and he's washing the mirror, Dale. He's just cleaning the mirror. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, French," kind of smart aleck that I am. "Hey, French, we got people for that." And he looked down on me like this, and he said, "In my office now, right now." And I went, "Oh, this isn't good." And French had the obligatory 1980s 30 by 30 foot, 900 square foot office. And he sat me down on a chair and he said, "I thought you had a chance, but I don't think so anymor." And I don't even know what he's talking about. All I know is I'm scared.
Sounds like you should be.
This is like a $1 million a year account. And French goes, "You don't get it. You absolutely don't get it." And I said, "Apparently not." And he's just a soft-spoken guy, but he kind of got up on right in front of me and said, "If the day comes that I'm too good to wipe down the mirrors, that's the day I quit. And you don't understand, Jim, that you work for the company. They don't work for you. And if you don't get that through your head now, you're never going to get it. I want you to think about this because you're on a track right now to never make it." And I mean, I literally almost crawled out of my chair going, man, I hadn't even thought of this, right? And this guy took his time to pull some young guy, off of a simple audit work, bring him into his office, and he took the time to send me that lesson. And I remember this is, 35 years ago, as though it happened 5 minutes ago. Because that day I went, he's right. And the lesson is, as a young guy, you want to get to the top of the mountain so the world can see you, right? And it's the other way around. You get to the top of the mountain so you can see the world. And French taught me that at 27, 26 years old. So you start stacking all this stuff, right? Your dad's restaurant, your big client kicks you in the head, and all the other things that happen to you. And you begin to put together what works and what doesn't work. And those are some early lessons. I may be straying from your question a little bit, but some early lessons that I've learned that I think I've leveraged. Others get to be the judge of that, not me. I appreciate your compliment earlier, but others will judge whether or not I was any good at it. I'd like to think so.
The outcomes were pretty good. But
in the end, that's kind of where it all started. Those couple of things started to happen. So,
what do you look for in a person who you're thinking of moving into a leadership role? What tells you someone has a shot at making it as a leader, at getting it, not being yelled at because they're not washing the
it's a great question. It's interesting. Generally, especially in the world that I grew up in, leaders are in the boxes, right? Here's the org chart. Just go down the boxes and the leaders will be naturally in the boxes that they will then ascend to. And what I've learned is that's almost never right. You're in the box because you were the hero. You're in the box because it was your turn. You're in the box because of some educational advantage. You're generally in a box not because of some leadership capability. It's just time and gravity took you there. So the one thing I've learned, it took a while, is don't look in the boxes for the leaders because they're probably not there. Look for the followers. They'll take you to the leader.
In what sense? How do you?
Who do people naturally gravitate to? Who are people looking for direction from? Who tends to always have everybody's ear? Who's the good listener? Who's the one that always seems to deliver results but doesn't do it with a gun and a 2x4? And they may not be the person in the box that should be the natural leader. And what I've found is if you look for the followers and the masses, they kind of take you to the leader all the time. And it's sort of counterintuitive that that's often not the person naturally in the box that
It's
they
not
should
the
be.
hierarchical leader.
It's generally not because of the way we built companies over the years. I think it's changing pretty dramatically. But I mean, the simple things that I would always look for, and this is the school board, the committee at your church, the Fortune 500 company. It doesn't really matter. The attributes and what good leaders do is really the same, I found. So what I would look for, I think there's two buckets, right? There's attributes, and then there's things you do. And I think they're very different. And this is one of the things we really explore in our leadership class is we often muddle all this together, and they're very, very different. So there's, humility and self-awareness and passion and a little bit of sense of humor and not inspirational in a raw way, but inspirational in a way that you care. And if you look for attributes like that, they're because they generally can't be trained. You kind of have those or you don't. So one thing I would kind of look for the attributes, which is different than what really, really good leaders do, which they are great at making decisions. They are great at creating clarity. They're great at delivering results. Because if you're a great leader and very humble and lead from the back and have everybody's back, but you can't deliver results, you're not going to be able to lead very long. So there's obviously a combination of leading people in an inspirational way, but creating accountability, clarity, and the ability to deliver results. And now and then, in that rare occasion, you get somebody that can do both. And the Bemis world that I lived in for so long, the place to find those kind of people were in the engineering group, because you had these just brilliant, if you got out of college with a chemical engineer degree, you're the smartest guy in the room, way smarter than me, by multiple levels. And now and then we would find these chemical engineers. My old boss taught me this. Find some of these chemies that had really good leadership attributes, that had real good leadership capability. And if you can work with them, you really have something here. And that was another place to look, not on the natural org chart, but you had that natural raw material and intelligence coupled with some, good EQ, coupled with the ability to deliver, problem solvers. Man, you had a special group of people. And so those are some of the things I look for. And secondly, Dale, on top of that, do you want to do it? A lot of people don't want to do it. A lot of people don't really want to be out in front. They can get up on Monday, hoping it's Friday, hook a bunch of those together, and that's good enough. There aren't too many people that you meet on a daily basis that really want to do a whole lot more than that. How many days do you go by and people you meet that their life is literally get up on Monday, hoping it's Friday, and hook those together. Then you meet the occasional person that looks at life and says, today's going to be a magnificent experience, and that's what I'm going to do. If you can find people like that, those are the people want to follow. Natural, positive kind of life outlook. So it's not all academic. It's not all empirical. It's not all chemical engineering. But now and then there's some nuggets of just the ability to get people to do more than they think that's possible. That's the special person. Those are the kind of people I look for. Sometimes I got it right, Dale. Sometimes I didn't. Because it's hard to know until you give people a chance who's up for it.
The University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh MBA Executive Program offers an array of scholarships supporting veterans, single parents, road warriors or those commuting more than 75 miles to attend class, employees of government and nonprofit organizations, and for those who make referrals for potential MBA executive students within their workplace or professional network. Eligible students may qualify for multiple scholarships. Visit uwo.sh/MBA scholarships for more information and eligibility requirements. That's uwo.sh/MBA SCHOLARSHIPS.
Some people argue that there are born leaders, people that are just born with the attributes and the ability to produce, to create those results. Other people will argue that leadership is something that can be learned, that even if you're not a natural born leader, if you think about it, if it's something you want to do and you work at it and you're diligent, you can become a pretty good leader. What do you think? Born? Learned? Both?
I would have thought for most of my adult life, leaders were sort of born. Then as you get smarter, it's amazing as you get
Which
old.
hopefully happens as you age.
I'm not sure. But as we get more experience, I think I've kind of done a 180 on this. And if anything, spending the last 5 years teaching this class at an EMBA level, 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are really trying to change their lives, one of the things I've learned is that there's no question you can be interested in leadership, but I think you can be taught. You can be around scenarios. You can follow what good leadership looks like if you want to do it bad enough. So I think you can teach it, train it, create it. I used to think you had to be born with it. I don't think that's true anymore. I think the days of, the Vince Lombardi, Lee Iacocca's, stand on the table, rah, rah. I'm not that sure that resonates with people anyway. I'm not sure that. So some of those sort of front man skill sets that used to be viewed as leadership, we used to view leadership more as the personality.
Yes.
And I just don't think that's true anymore. I think it's nice to have charisma. People like it and follow
All
it.
else equal.
All else equal. Charisma is great. Presence, big personalities. I don't think those are attributes that spell leadership anymore. And those you probably have to be born with, I think. So as you think going forward, if those aren't as critical anymore, that big personality, charismatic leader that we used to see back in our earlier days,
Yep.
That's not what it's going to look like in the future. I don't think. The world changes too fast.
And what is it going to look like in the future?
I think it's going to be the people with intensely strong EQs that are very self-aware because everything's moving so fast, extreme level of self-awareness, a high degree of humility, because if you don't have everybody's back, they're just not going to follow you. So awareness, humility, a high level of intelligence, and the ability to adapt to change rapidly. And even though the leader has to have the answer, we're not running U-boats, man. We're not commanding the military. You don't have to have all the answers. You won't have all the answers. So humility and self-awareness are going to trump, in my view, some of the sort of historically important attributes still. And so leaders of the future are going to look different. They have to. They have to. Think of the pace of change right now. Some days I wake up going, God, I really wish I was still running a company. And most days I wake up going, oh my God, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. It's so hard. You have to deal with so many issues at once. And how do you create intense accountability and keep a workforce, place I used to work, 10 or 15 or 20,000 people happy when you have 15% turnover and people can get a job anywhere they want? So you have to create all this intense accountability, which puts a lot of demand on people. At the same time, people have options that they've never had before. They can go anywhere and work anywhere. They don't even have to move anymore. They can work literally, 50% of the jobs you can do from your kitchen table. So the leaders of the past have to completely change what they used to view as key attributes. So I think there's going to be even a bigger premium now than ever placed on who can lead in this kind of environment.
Humility and awareness, two of the characteristics you identified as being important in a leader.
Yeah.
If you're a senior leader in an organization and you're trying to develop people who will have humility and awareness, or if you're a young person and you realize that awareness is often not something that 25-year-olds have, humility maybe a little less because you're kind of full of yourself. How does that happen? How does an organization get people to have humility and awareness? How does a person get humility and awareness?
Well, we're getting a little bit outside of my skill set here. You know, I think, what do we reward, Dale? Are we, if you look at, you've a lot of things you can do to motivate people, but oftentimes who we reward and how we reward will be the sort of the path for what we're looking for in an organization. So for most of my life, we reward the heroes.
Yep.
We reward the heroes. That's what we did. That's what you and I did our whole lives.
Yep. You were the great person who did X.
You were the hero.
Applause.
That's how you got rewarded. That's how you got promoted. That's how you got paid. When what we really should have been looking for is the network driver, the person that can make everyone around them better, the person that can make 2 people better than 4 people, the person that can leverage their own abilities, the network contributor versus the hero. So if you want to try to create humility and awareness and all those EQ skills, you have to find people that have the network contributor basket of skills instead of the heroes. The heroes are easy. The sales guy that set the record, the waitress that can handle the most table. I mean, it's pretty obvious who the heroes are. And they're usually individual contributors. So self-awareness and humility and all these high EQ skill sets we're talking about tend to not necessarily be lined up with heroes. They tend to be in these network kind of contributors, the people that are more interested in watching the organization win than they are themselves. The people that will go out of their way to help somebody. The someone that will take the blame and give the credit. If you start rewarding and promoting those kind of people, all of a sudden you start to see the swing in an organization. So that's what they're looking for, not just heroes. And most of us grew up, certainly you and I did, and I'm sure it's true in academia, Dale, it can't be any different, that the heroes are the ones that got all the attention, got all the money, got the promotion.
The individual contributors.
Yeah. And organizations are made up of heroes. And I think the organizations of the future, and I'm not talking just business, everywhere, are made up of the people that create more with less, the people that can convince you that you really haven't reached your peak. Your bandwidth is this wide and you're only operating in that much bandwidth. And so I'm going to have to promote, encourage, coach, and position people with those skills. And they may not be the heroes and the individual contributors that we all spent most of our careers rewarding. So that's one way to do it. The other is it can be taught. How many leadership classes do we have in a big organization that I worked in or ones you've worked in where, most leadership courses, we start out with accountability and then we go into, organizational design, then we go into strategy, and then we go into, wait a minute, what does it look like to be tough-minded? What happens when you make a wrong decision? How are you going to handle failure? This stuff isn't generally part of the curriculum, as you know. And so in addition to promoting the right people, what are we conveying as the important elements in leadership development? And I have found most of it is sort of the hardcore stuff that good leaders have to do. They better create clarity. They better create accountability. They better deliver results. They better be able to make decisions with 50% of the information. They better be able to get X, Y, and Z done. But how are you going to do it? If you turn around, there's no one there.
It's lonely.
First of all, you're going to be working a lot and you're probably going to fail. So it's a great question you ask. I've been out of the game for 5 years now, so I don't know what companies are necessarily doing. I know what we do in our MBA. I know what we're trying to do. And I know in talking to the students, and I say students, these are 30 to 40-year-olds. These aren't kids. in the programs that I've taught that it's helped me change how I look at this. You know, I mean, when you think about being a good leader and being humble, you better look in the mirror and make sure you're not in love with yourself. And you better keep getting better, because nobody's hit their apex. So one of the beauties, you didn't really ask me this, but one of the beauties of teaching this leadership class is that I'm still learning a lot.
So you went from being CEO of Bemis North America, running this huge organization, president, Bemis North America, officer of the company, huge responsibilities, loads of people reporting to you.
Yep.
Now you're
But
now you're running this class of whatever, 15, 20 students, and you learn something about leadership from them?
Oh my God, yes.
How so?
First of all, I'm looking for it. You have to be looking for it. If you're not openly looking for how to get better and how to improve, you're going to end up going back into get up on Monday and hope it's Friday. Not that I've not used that too many times already. So what I have learned in this EMBA journey, and I had no clue I was getting into, as you know, in the world I lived in, you got in a room and you took command of the room as much as you were humble and hopefully a self-serving leader. But in the world of education and leading these students, it's their room. It's not yours. It's theirs. You have to completely rethink what your role is. And your job as a leader is to extract from them experiences that they can connect and they can leverage. So you learn how to lead through them, not lead for them. And it wasn't like immediate. You were very helpful in helping me see all this. So what I learned, and I am still learning, is all these people that sign up for these EMBA programs, they're on their own journey. They're all in there asking a question. Can I change my earnings profile? Can I change my career? Can I grow as an employee? Can I, and they're all asking a question. So what I've learned is they start out asking a couple of key questions. About halfway through, their questions change. As you know this, Dale, you're long better at this than me. You watch these young people go through these EMBA programs, and anything really, their questions change. And so what I've learned is the closer I listen to their questions, the more I learn about where their flat spots are, and then help them and coach them. And I do a lot of it after they graduate, of their flat spots that they don't know they have. They weren't looking for those flat spots. They were over here looking for these. So I've just picked up a new set of skills I just didn't have because I wasn't in a close contact with this group of people for a year like this straight.
Right.
There was always another objective, a customer, Wall Street.
Just growth development.
Right. It was Wall Street and a customer and a number of other things. This is just how do how do we create an environment where every one of you need to come out of here as better leaders, or we totally failed each other. That's some of the stuff that I've been picking up on this, that, it's quite a gift to be able to still do this, to be able to be in that kind of an environment and do it. As much as you pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this every Saturday, that, by the way, is not accurate. It's that much fun to do because you're giving instead of taking. And it's one other thing I've learned in retirement. It's way more fun making it than having it. The process and the journey is the whole thing. It's not the destiny. And that's what I'm sort of getting out of this and the other stuff I've done. Your perspective changes when you're not in the game anymore. Right. You're not in the foxhole taking live rounds, right? You can sit back and kind of enjoy it all. And it's given me a chance to soak up that from these 10, 20, young adults who are all trying to solve some life question that's different than the one they thought they were asking. Yes. That is so much fun. I get excited just talking about it, as you can tell.
The University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh offers the first of its kind MBA executive program in Northeast Wisconsin. Cohorts meet on weekends at the Appleton Executive Education Center with options available in a 12 or 16-month timeline. The results-driven MBA executive program provides an education that is both relevant and actionable, so you can take the knowledge you learn on Saturday and immediately apply it at work on Monday. No GRE or GMAT required. See if the MBA executive program is right for you by visiting uwo.sh/EMBA. That's uwo.sh/EMBA. It's time to achieve more with a graduate degree from UW-Oshkosh.
It is great.
Yeah.
You had mentioned failure. How did you as a leader, how do you now address where a follower has failed? How do you think about, okay, they didn't deliver the results. They didn't achieve something that they wanted to achieve. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's changed over the years. You know, I have this old equation that I've always used, which is really, really, really good excuses plus really, really trying intensely hard equals a really okay performance. And then the big line through the equal mark, which is, no, that's just not how it works. I don't pay you to try hard, and I don't pay you for excuses. I pay you to deliver results. That's pretty much how I grew up as a leader. And then as you mature, you understand that really good excuses aren't excuses. They're just something went wrong. Why don't we try to figure out what went wrong instead of trying to blame someone for doing something wrong? So the first thing is make sure that you view an excuse not as, you know, who to blame, who to fire, who to point the gun at, but let's look, 5 levels down at what drove that. And then, people generally they wake up trying really hard. And so how do you use trying hard, not as a reason for not delivering because you didn't get it done, but leverage that level of intensity towards, maybe I got you in the wrong job. Maybe I got you in the wrong role. Maybe I wasn't clear on the question. But the first thing with failure is get out the mirror, Dale. Every person I've ever fired, every one of them, I've looked in the mirror and go, what the hell did I do wrong? Every single one, including the dishwashers at that restaurant from 40 years ago to people that, we all let people go. You've let professors go.
Yep.
But there isn't one of them not one. I mean, there's a couple of fraud things and things, but generally speaking, there isn't one of them that I haven't looked in the mirror and went, where did I fail? And if you don't do that, you're going to repeat your mistakes, first off, and you're going to do disservice. Because even someone that completely fails, there were other reasons that had nothing to do with them. So I've always found, maybe this is back to the humility part, you better start with the mirror. If there's failure in the area, whether it's personal, whether it's the company, whether it's your church, whether it's whatever organization you're part of, start with the mirror and be honest. And if you don't, first of all, people will follow you. You can use failure as a hell of a leadership opportunity.
Go on. What do you mean?
Because you're being humble and honest and credible. There's no one that's going to go through life without screwing something up. You're going to go through a typical week and have a dozen failures. It's just a matter of how big they are. You're going to go, big decisions in my last life, they're big decisions because half of them you're wrong and the other half no one agrees with. And so the way to manage through that is to be open and honest and credible and be humble about the fact you don't have all the answers. So sometimes failure creates incredible credibility with your organization. If you openly admit, I got that wrong. That is on me. My old boss, Henry Tyson at Bemis, the guy that hired me, in one of the interviews, he was asking me a couple of questions, and he said, what do you think about leadership? What do you think about failure? What do you think about this and that? And I started mumbling something, and he goes, you really don't know if you're any good until you lose your first $10 million customer. And I went, well, Henry, that might be true, but that won't Of course it happened to me. But that rung so true to me that he said, then we'll know if you're any good. We'll know if you're any good.
By how you respond.
After you lose your first $10 million customer, because Jim, it's going to happen to you. I go, no, he goes, it's going to happen to you. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. You're going to have a couple of shots to the bow here, And how are you going to respond to that? And that really was a great lesson, because of course we did. And, there's the diagnostics and all the things you do when something fails. But what I think you have to do as the leader is you have to take the brunt of the failure, or the organization's going to hide. They're going to be afraid to try to resolve it. They're not going to know who to blame. They're not going to know what their outcome is going to be personally. So the more you can absorb the failure, if that's the right word, the better chance you are of people coming clean on what the real issues are, and you can succeed. The other thing I'd tell you about, I don't know if failure is the right word, but when things are going really, really well, and the company's doing great, or the church is doing great, or the school board's going well, or whatever it is, you can be pretty hard on people. You can expect things that are probably irrational. You can push people. You can really, really ask a lot of the organization, maybe even sometimes unfairly, when things are really, really good. But counterintuitively, when things are failing or things are bad, that is when you can't pound on the desk. You can't go crazy. You can't act irrational. So if things are great, you can put a point on it. When things are tough and they're failing, that's when you embrace the organization. You don't try to create more fear. You didn't get it done. What's your problem? What's the excuse? Why did it fail? What went wrong? It's too emotional, too raw, and you won't get the right answer anyway. So I've always found when things are tough and they're going poorly, that's when you become calm and you hug the organization.
You take care of the troops.
You just take care of them. Did you ever hear the story about a wolf pack?
No.
So if you look at a wolf pack, I didn't think I'd tell this story today. Even you haven't heard this one. You look at a wolf pack, and was there 10, 20 wolves in a pack, right? The wolf that's out in front, the first wolf, the sort of the scout wolf, is clearly one of the strong, tough-minded wolves, right? Then they put the wolves kind of naturally put the weaker wolves next, and then sort of the masses, if there are such a word, in packs of wolves. The leader's at the back, always. The lead wolf is in the back of the pack to protect everybody. And so I think as if you think about that, it's sort of obvious that if you want to lead, you better lead from the back and have the organization's back. So if there's failure, if there's an issue, if there's a problem, you have their back. And if an organization knows you have their back, or a person does, and it's sincere, you can get through any failure, Dale. But if you don't, everybody hides under their desk, starts pointing fingers, and you create an organization of second guessing, and then it's over.
And so as you balance the leadership focus on taking care of the troops, making sure they got dry socks, and the leadership focus on pushing and motivating individuals to do more, actually, when the organization is struggling, you focus more on the dry socks. And
Absolutely.
when the organization is doing well, you focus on pushing.
Absolutely. It works every time. Because if you do it the opposite, you start pushing hard, which is normally what we do.
Mm-hmm.
This is failing, that's failing. We're missing budget. We're missing our sales quota. We're not operating at the right level of performance.
Damn it.
You start
Get with the
hammering.
program.
You start hammering. Bullets start firing, since we're using military analogies. And people get scared. And they go in their foxhole, and second guessing starts, and nothing happens. And I just found it just doesn't work. But I started out this whole interview with, you can create a fear to perform, or you can try to inspire success. It doesn't work quite that polarized sort of model, but the leaders and the future leaders of this country, this environment we live in, I think they have to make that choice. If you're going to create an environment, a culture where fear is sort of what's driving performance, you're not going to have an employment base. The C employees might stay with you, but the A's and B's are going to be out the door, versus trying to inspire success. So, you're in their life. You do a great job of this, so you're in their life to help them find some level of success or happiness that they couldn't get to without you there. And it sounds sort of altruistic. And, how do you run a public company like that? Well, you don't wake up every day and do that, but you're sort of built this way or you're built that way. And one works and one doesn't. And unfortunately, over time, we've rewarded, promoted many of these types of people. That those days are, I think, coming to an end. I think.
Hope.
And those people that operate that way promote more people that operate that way. And then you get an organization of cultural fear. And you watch the number of open positions, the number of people leaving their jobs, 4 million people in the month of September? It just is unheard of. And I think you're going to keep them with money? I don't think so. I just read an article that I think it was Deloitte in New York, 30% to 35% average raises for every single person because they can't keep them. Do you really think giving someone an extra 30% is going to keep them? Maybe.
Short term.
But there'll be another 35 right around the corner and then 40 after that. You have to do more than paper over this problem with cash. It won't work. It might have worked for me when I was 25 or 30. It isn't going to work anymore. So every day you're going to have to figure out a way to inspire some level of success in an organization that's way broader than cash. And part of that is how you're going to handle failure.
It's Time is a production of the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh College of Business graduate programs in association with Venture Project Studios. Executive producer, Aaron J. Armstrong. Host, Professor Dale Feinauer. Creative director, Madison Potratz. Director of photography, Elazar Kloon. Audio and video editor, Elazar Kloon. Marketing strategy, Tara Larson. Social media, Anwar Mahana. A special thanks to L Creative, Top View Media, Michael Patton, and the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh College of Business graduate programs.